Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. The Council just concluded a historic vote, a vote that I don't think anybody in this building remembers ever having been taken before. The actual censure of two sitting members of the City Council and former member Martinez. I think this was, while some might describe a censure as a symbolic vote, the symbolism here was exceptionally important in demonstrating that this council stands completely united with the overwhelming call of the people of Los Angeles and the people, in fact, of the entire United States in saying that the conduct and the comments that were recorded and reported from that meeting are not only abhorrent and despicable, but absolutely inconsistent with the values and the requirements of being a member of the City Council. And you just saw a unanimous vote of the members of this council, people who represent the broad cross-section of Los Angeles, and we stood in unity with the people of Los Angeles in completely rejecting those actions and in calling once again for the resignation of Mr. De León and Mr. Cedillo. So I'm very proud that the members of this council stood in such lockstep and took that very important action. I want to thank Mr. Harris Dawson and all of the members of the Ad Hoc Censure Committee for doing this work and bringing it before us. So with that, I'd like to open the floor to any of my colleagues who'd like to speak as well. Okay. So we can go straight to questions then.
So what is the message that you're going to send to Kevin De León and Bill Cedillo with this?
Well, I think the message has been clear and consistent and loud from every member of this council. You know, some of the members of the public who, you know, demand that we do something should understand that with this vote, we have literally done every possible action available to the council in demanding the resignation of our two colleagues. We've now done it by formal vote in addition to the censure. So there are no steps remaining for this council to take to demand those resignations. It's now up to the people of the 14th Council District to really step forward with a recall in order to remove Mr. De León from office. In the case of Mr. Cedillo, of course, he will be leaving office in the ordinary course. If he were to resign tomorrow, I'd be prepared to put before the council swearing in the council member-elect for the 1st District immediately.
Are there members of the council who have told you that they don't want to be in the same chamber with Mr. Cedillo or Mr. De León here?
Without going into individual conversations, let me just say it's clear to me that if Mr. De León were to attempt to actively participate in council meetings, there would be other members who would not be part of that meeting. And at a time when we are struggling literally with every meeting to try to ensure that we have a quorum so that we can continue to do the work of the people, that is a clear example of how his continuing presence as a member of the council is actually detracting from our ability to do the important work that's before us.
So yesterday, the idea was, for you, at least my takeaway was, okay, these people are allowed, we're going to do our business and they can do their thing, this is a freedom of speech issue. Today, something changed. The council, did you just lose patience? Was there a moment?
Well, I don't have much patience with it in the first place. I think, you know, I have demonstrated in the chair far more patience than should reasonably be expected in the management of our council meetings. But on the other hand, you know, I recognize these are extraordinary times, and one way or the other, whether it's through technological means or whether it's through other means, this council will do the work that we've been elected to do, and we will not be taken off of that path by distractions, by noise, by disturbances, by disruptions in the meeting. One way or the other, we will continue to do our work. We demonstrated it yesterday, we demonstrated it again today, and we will continue to demonstrate it at each and every council meeting.
You mentioned that the next step might be for the district to enact a recall effort. So is that acknowledging that you don't expect that the censure is going to have any impact on Kevin DeLeon's decision?
I wouldn't want to predict what reaction it has. I mean, it's hard for me to understand, honestly, why why Mr. De Leon in particular has been so insistent upon not resigning. To me, it's, and I think I don't want to speak for all my colleagues, but the vote today I think reflects that we all believe it's imperative to the good of the city. It's imperative as a first step to allow this city to heal. And I would just personally add, I think that it's imperative for the people of the 14th Council District so that they can have a active representative in this council for him to resign so we can set a special election and elect somebody who can fully participate in the council. I also think it's important for, Mr. De Leon himself to be able to continue the work that he indicates he wants to do in mending some of the harm that has been caused. He can do that work, but he can't do that work so long as he continues to serve as a member of this council because it continues to compound the wounds.
Chief Moore has indicated that the LAPD will investigate who recorded the conversation, and so it's conceivable that whoever reported it could face a bigger punishment than Cedillo and Kevin DeLeon. I just want to get your reaction to that.
It could, in fact, be. Chief Moore and the LAPD will investigate criminal conduct. Unfortunately for the council, unless there is a finding of criminal conduct, we're left without the tools to suspend members. We can only suspend under very narrow circumstances when there's been an indictment and some very limited other circumstances. That has not been the case so far with the members involved, and so we don't have that option available to us. So the censure motion was what we had available, and that's the action we took today. Oh, I'm sorry, just Mr. Kretz, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say on the question of what next for Kevin De Leon, I don't believe he can keep this up, and I don't think he should. This is keeping the city from healing. I think it will be very difficult for him to continue to ignore that. So I don't believe we're going to get to the point where he has to be recalled. At some point, he has to recognize he can't move on with his life until he resigns, and neither can the city. And I think in the best interest of the city, he will at some point come to his senses and realize once he has resigned, then he can go on a healing tour of media and community groups and try to bring this city together. But right now, his continuing in office is just tearing it apart.
Yes, I may want to ask any of the members. We heard multiple times today that people are upset that De Leon and Cedillo are drawing a paycheck while they are not showing up to work. What's the cost to the taxpayers while they are doing this in terms of pay, pension, retirement, health care, and all? Can you kind of give us an idea of what this is costing the taxpayers?
It's the ordinary salary and benefits that any council member has. We have one of the things that we are looking at actually is under the charter there is a provision by which the council can take action to remove a member who is not performing the duties of a council member, and that is unfortunately vague language, and merely not attending meetings may or may not constitute a failure to fulfill the obligations of a council member. So we're going to be calling upon the city attorney to opine as to where that line is, because it's just wrong that a member should continue to draw a salary when they're not performing those obligations. But we may be limited in how much we can apply that depending upon what the city attorney reports to us on that.
So if I may follow up, is their pay affected whether they resign today or if they serve out the rest of their term? How does that work?
If they resign today, they stop getting paid today. So in the case of Ms. Martinez, she's off the city payroll. There are presumably some ongoing potential benefits, pensions, and so on. That's not something that, under the law, we could even touch under any circumstances. But yeah, as far as salary is concerned, resignation means you're not on the city's payroll anymore.
Do you know how many days, off the top of your head, they would have to be absent from the council meeting in order for you to invoke that?
So that's one of the things that needs to be reported back by the city attorney, because there is no clarification on that within the charter. There's a provision of the charter that says that if there are 60 consecutive days that a member is absent from the city without permission, that's justification for removal from office. But it does say absence from the city, not absence from city council meetings. So we need clarification from the city attorney on whether that's when that provision or the related 90 days of not performing the duties of a council member, when that would kick in.
So if his constituents do file a recall, are you guys planning to raise money for it?
I think I don't want to put members in the position of trying to make political declarations about potential future campaigns. It's really up to the people of the 14th District to initiate this. I think we've all made our position on it very clear, and I again don't want to speak for other members, but I can tell you that I would certainly be supportive of the people in demanding that their council member be one that they have chosen to continue to represent them, and a recall is the way to do that.
Also, there was a mention today, and I want to make sure I understood it, but not when I heard Mark Cleese assessing the audio, and I think he was discussing the redistricting process as being anti-black. And please tell me if I'm wrong, it was a little bit vague, and I was hoping you could hear. But do you guys feel that the end product, the maps that were created, that you guys are now serving under, are those the product of racism? And if so, do they need to be redone?
I think Ms. Rodriguez raised some important points in her argument, and I'd like to ask her to speak too about the need for independent redistricting. Some of us brought that motion over a year ago, and we will be moving forward with those reforms. You'd have to ask Mr. Harris Dawson whether he was what he was referring to there. I don't want to speak for him, but I think this was. Sorry, Ms. Rodriguez, but let me just make this one point. This whole system that we just went through was a ludicrously broken process to do redistricting. The so-called independent redistricting commission that we had was anything but independent. It was influenced by people who were sitting in that very commission who were lobbyists or who make their living off of government. So it was a hopelessly fragmented fractured process that created that work product in the first place. And similarly, when it came before us for us to be able to vote on that, that's also something that is a fundamental problem that we shouldn't be subjected to. We shouldn't be voting on our own districts, and that's what I think Ms. Rodriguez was pointing to, and which our motion pointed to as well, but I'll let her add.
No, the Voting Rights Act dictates how districts should be apportioned and how communities are identified and how districts are convened. I think in this process, people have to have an independent conversation and a very honest conversation about what the numbers are and what the districts look like, and representation of what these current districts look like, I think needs to be reflected. I think everyone is allowed their own interpretation of what occurred. I believe, in my opinion, what occurred was preservation of their own personal power. That's a very different conversation than what others might suggest. And I think what needs to happen going forward, because we saw a lot of, I don't agree necessarily, I don't recall lobbyists as part of the process, but I will say that I saw towards the end of redistricting a number of replacements of commission appointees. I saw a lot that occurred that caused a lot of concern. And I think for me, it's why I called for an independent report that would be provided outside of the city legislative analyst. This report completely independent for us to have a truly independent redistricting process. Because unfortunately, what we all saw and what we discovered in those tapes revolved around redistricting. And so for that reason, I think it's imperative that we have a very honest conversation that is derived with information that is pulled together in a report independent from the City Council. And it's why I introduced that amendment for it to be an independent report rather than just a report from our own city legislative analyst. But I believe that to be the case, and I think that's an important step going forward because it addresses the root cause of how and why we're all here.
Right,
and
besides the root cause, is this not the fruit of the poisonous tree? That you're operating under districts right now that were indicted in that tape, that audio tape.
Can I add something? Just to add to Ms. Rodriguez's comment and Council President's comment, let's not forget our State Attorney General, Rob Bonta, is investigating the redistricting process. And I think I, for one, stand for that. And that should lead to a lot of answers on what this investigation finds, how it informs us moving forward. And I will say this as well. The question is about redistricting is the source of the very issue we're talking about. Everything else is a bit of a sideshow. I mean, Mr. De Leon's atonement and apology tour is really a sideshow, and it's a way of distracting from the original sin of why 3 council members met off-site during the redistricting commission process with the County Federation of Labor leader in a back room away from all of us, which made all of us pawns and disempowered all of us and the redistricting commission at the same time. And then from there, the discretion, the indiscretion, the travesty of all this, and the incredibly racist remarks are what has taken all of the oxygen. But the original sin was trying to coalesce and hold on to power from 3 members meeting off-site. And that is the source of this very issue. And I, for one, am glad that our State Attorney General is investigating this process. I hope that will be very informative, but we also don't have the information before us to act in some sort of rational manner on this. So let's let the process inform us on how we move forward while we unanimously support a new redistricting process. We unanimously support exploring growing the council and decentralizing the power away from just 3 individuals if there are more council members. These are the reforms that we're all getting behind at this time. Thank you.
If I could add one thing.
Yeah.
Actually, if I could just finish my one. And I think what is an opportunity for us to all consider is that the possibility of having a new map before the next set of elections would be critically important to make sure that everyone feels honored and respected in the process and that everyone is adequately represented. And so I think the outcomes of both the investigations, as you mentioned, Mr. O'Farrell, that the AG's office is conducting, I think that is one step forward to bringing greater transparency and having people feel that they've been honored and respected in this process and that every community is represented in accordance to the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah, if I could add one thing, the original question was, is this a terrible reapportionment? And one thing that I'm not sure anyone's focused on is the reapportionment that the folks that were in question in that meeting looked for was not the reapportionment that we actually wound up with. It was what they were looking for and what they were trying to manipulate didn't happen. And so I'm not sure that the results of this redistricting were that terrible, but the process and the fact that one couldn't conspire to manipulate it points to something that never can happen again. So whether this somewhat accidentally wound up being a fair reapportionment to some degree is not the question. The question is, should elected officials in Los Angeles be able to decide their own districts? I think this is pointed out to us loud and clear. This has to be the last time it's done that way. There are some obvious reforms that come out of this. I am sure they will all be enacted. And so some positive will come out of this as we try to heal the city.
I guess the only other thing I would add is, in a city as complicated and diverse as this is, ensuring fair representation for all of the communities of Los Angeles is a very challenging process, especially when each district is over 250,000 people. That's why Mr. O'Farrell's motion that was filed on the first day that we got back after hearing about this story that many of us joined in on, to expand the size of the council, is such a critical reform that we in my view, must move forward as well, because with more seats allows a greater opportunity for more representation by that will be more reflective of the diversity of Los Angeles.
Friday, what's it going to be like? What's it going to look like? Come one, come all, or are the doors going to be locked?
No, we don't lock the doors to the City Council of Los Angeles. Our meetings are public. On Friday, we will be having a closed session item that we'll need to discuss without the public present. But we're going to be moving forward with the work of the people. We're going to be moving forward with that work with the full participation of the public. But at the same time, we can't have a situation where a small number of people takes us off course of doing that work. So how we manage that is going to be on a meeting-by-meeting basis. But the presumption is always going to be the public has a right to come in and participate in the Council of Los Angeles.
What's that about De León?
No. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.